Are you ready to get empowered? Of course you are. Well, you've picked the right time and the right place. It's time now for Host-Phantceena Halres and the Empowered Family Talk program. Spend the next hour with Host-Phantceena and learn things that you need to know.
I am Host-Phantceena Halres, and this is Empowered Family Talk.
May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Good day to each of our listeners and sponsors, and welcome back to Empowered Family Talk on this Monday, April 23rd, 2018. Our scripture for today is Proverbs 13:20 and John 15:13 and James 1:19, which is a segue to our topic today. We the peoples, paying it forward in the 21st century within our inclusive, diverse relationships and communications as business owners and employees. Are we prepared? I am delighted to be joined today by our featured panel guest, Mr. Mel Rappleyea. Mr. Mel Rappleyea from the state of Florida, and Mr. Demetrios Meimaridis from the state of South Carolina, and the newest member of our TTD team, joining us from Athens, Greece, Mr. Dimitrios Petropoupos. Welcome to Empowered Family Talk, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Do we have Demetrios and Mel? Yes.
Thank you, Host-Phantceena.
Thank you so much, Dimitri, for joining us today. Before we get to our discussion, I have a submittal for the table from one of our colleagues in the United Kingdom who produced a 48 report on 21st century relationships and the importance it lends to our bottom line in business and our personal lives. And I'll read a few excerpts from that forward. And it reads as follows, quote, "There is an old African saying called Ubuntu. Ubuntu. It means I am because we are. It's the idea that meaning and fulfillment and the very essence of who we are is found in our relationship with other people. This mental health awareness has a singular and vital message that if we want to build a thriving country, a thriving community, and a thriving business or a thriving home life, we must think profoundly about our relationships. We know that not smoking, not drinking in moderation, eating healthy, and exercising are good for both our physical and mental health. We are told so regularly, but we don't hear nearly enough about the deep impact of building and maintaining good relationships and how to do that. So he's calling for a renewed commitment to nurturing healthy relationships in the 21st century. And he closes with this. Relationships require reflection, time, courage, and grace. Modern life often reduces the space that we have to do this. Many of us are under strain, be it exams for school, work commitments, or financial pressures. In a message to decision makers and the public alike, our report, he says, reinforces the message that productivity should not come at the expense of our collective capacity to connect with each other, unquote. And I submit to the table for discussion. Now, the question becomes for the table, guys, Mel and Dimitri, as business owners in the 21st century, how do we bridge the gap in our inclusive, diverse relationships and communication as business owners to ensure that we enjoy the benefits of a prosperous business and a prosperous life with mutually beneficial relationships? And I'm going to start with Mr. Dimitri Petropoupos, our colleague in Athens. As we talk about relationships in business, can you share with us your story, benefits and challenges of relationships in the European market? How important are relationships in doing business? Dimitri.
Okay, Phantceena, I prefer Mel to start, or Dimitris. Sorry, but I have my daughter with me right now that I'm waiting for my wife to pick her up, okay?
Yes.
So give me 10 minutes, please, okay?
Yes. Mel, would you like to step into that? While we wait on Dimitri, how important do you think relationships are here in the 21st century? You have to pull your phone. I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think that the relationships are extremely important. I think that's why you've had social media have such a big boom because people are connecting. People are reestablishing relationships they haven't had since high school before. And this transcends into the business world where now I can easily have a conversation with someone in Greece or China or California just as readily as I can have it with them down the street. I can send information to them. It's really the one thing the internet has really done is create this ability to have relationships. What we have to be careful for going in the future is, a sight unseen relationship is a tough thing. You have to get in front of your client, your customer, or whatnot. But it's good for an introduction and for maintenance. But nothing beats that face to face. But that relationship issue has been just magnified since we've had social media like LinkedIn and other business sites like that, Facebook, all these sites that are bringing people together in a business format.
Well, I think that's a very good point, Mel. Thank you for sharing your comments on that. Demetrios Meimaridis, do you have something you can share with our listeners on the value of relationships in accomplishing our business goals and work objectives in the 21st century?
Yeah, relationships are very, very important. Like they say, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So the more you can build a relationship with somebody, whatever type of business you're into or doing, that's a trust factor. And the more you build a relationship, the better you trust each other, and the more the business will move forward. Once you lose that trust in a relationship, then the business will go south. It just doesn't go right. So business relationships is a long-term thing. You might have one contract that works, but you have to keep it ongoing. You always have to do follow-ups, phone calls. Just make sure you interact with each other all the time, because once you lose that interaction, it kind of fizzles away.
Yes. And I think we experienced that. If Demetrius is back with us, just let us know when he joins back with us. But I'll share my story on the importance of this topic today. When we look at our nations and our Congress and the conditions of our economy, and if we really peel back that onion, we have relationship imbalance in our society, which is having a domino effect in our economics. and in our prosperity. So our purpose here with Empowered Family Talk is to ensure that we at least provide our listeners with some of our experiences that are often written in books and you don't often get in classrooms, that really work and are successful even today. Folks would ask me, Mel, and Demetrios is familiar with this, how does an African American woman get into the nuclear security business? I get that question all the time. And my simple answer is healthy relationships. We don't believe in competing by paper. We know that system is rigged. So the value going forward, we have to ensure that we continue to include in our business model and share with our families today that the first lesson in relationships begin at home before they even make it to the workplace and or to a business contract. Mel, have you seen the benefit of healthy home relationships when you hire folks into the workforce? Are you able to ascertain a difference between good and healthy and bad relationships in the workplace?
I've been able to, through relationships and sometimes this is more probably of a religious slant I heard this from a preacher recently, where sometimes you meet a person and they're only for that particular space and time, and then you move on to somebody else, to that next relationship. Sometimes it's a stepping stone person, and I think some relationships we need to step out of because they've already produced all the fruit that they're going to produce. When we get into another relationship, when someone else, when God brings somebody else in our path, to establish that relationship, and maybe that relationship is for a week, a year, a lifetime. They say that if you have 2 or 3 friends that have been with you for over 7 years, they're going to be friends with you forever.
Yes.
And it's the same thing in relationships. If you have 2 or 3 relationships that have lasted 7 or more years, you're probably going to have those relationships forever. It's culling through. I mean, I know you're like I am. I must receive 100 emails a day just from LinkedIn of, would like to sit down and meet with you, would like to talk with you. We have this great software. We have this great service. We have this great product. And, obviously you can't meet with all of these people and you try to maintain a relationship with them. But you just have to know, back to your question, yeah, I've seen where, you've gone into a relationship and you just don't feel good about it and you step away from it. And, or other relationships that need to be more, I think that just comes with experience. And that's the one thing, that our company does is we have a lot of experienced people who know when a relationship is going to be a good relationship and when a relationship isn't going to bear any fruit.
Well, that's the key, particularly in HR. You manage your relationships. 90% of that 8-hour day that you have leading a team of people to accomplish a task that adds value to the shareholders' bottom line of that product or service. That's key. Relationships can be healthy or relationships can be bad. It can profit you or it can cause destruction. What I found, and is Demetrios back with us yet from Athens? Was he able to reconnect? Not yet. What I found now that going forward is we look at our global economy and our global workforce and supply chain that when you have relationships with foreign entities and those from other cultures that don't necessarily speak your language or value the same items that you value regarding work or a business, we have formed successfully a bridge the gap hybrid model that brings folks together outside of the office. Whether it's extracurricular activities or over a meal, we found that international relationships really depend on trusted relationships for business partners going forward and those coming into their workplace. Demetrios Meimaridis,
yes.
Can you share with us how important relationships became for a project that you managed in your career and its success by having healthy relationships with people?
Like in the security business, or
in your security, your art? You have so many talents, but we can start with security and stay there.
well, security been in the element for a while now. One project was actually the National Guard. We actually back in 2006, I think, to 2006 to 2008, we took over that project. There were a lot of issues. The problem was, one of them was, the management would never even come visit the site. So I started kind of just contacting the people, pretty much the leaders, the site leaders over there, and kind of introduce myself. Not really like I'm going to be in charge of you, but I'm pretty much your contact. They kind of like that approach where they felt not like, oh, my boss is coming. It's more like a contact. If I need anything, I can just call you at the office. So I would actually do site visits on a regular basis to build that relationship, because they didn't know me going in. But once I started building it, on a regular basis, kind of going saying hello, how you doing, and is there anything I can get you? What is there any issues today? What have you? At first it was kind of tense, but the more I did it, the more they loosened up. It's kind of like a friendship. I kind of became their friends, but you don't want to be too close, because you lose that trust as well, because you just become friends. The respect factor is lost. But that's how I kind of built a relationship with that project. I always contacted them, and I always try to get whatever issues were out there for them to tell me, so I can solve them immediately. And the quicker we solve the issues, the better.
Well, I think that's very important in a highly secured nuclear power plant, and classified information, safeguards. You have to ensure that you have trusted relationships on the inside and the outside in order to produce a qualified project for the client. So the importance of relationships, I believe, like the article from the report, which I'll post on social media because it's a great one, which indicates that we are not placing enough time and money into investing into relationships, period, which is a big challenge for moving forward in our workplaces today. Mel, would you offer up any, based on your experience in having to deal with and manage many types of relationships in the 20th century, what do you see going forward? What types of different relationships? We'll get to communication later, because we know that relationship and communications go hand in hand. But we have to establish a relationship first. What do you see in the workplace of the 21st century? How valued relationships will become?
Unfortunately, I see relationships hitting kind of a back road lately due to a couple of issues. One's a bigger racial divide. You would think that racially we're getting closer together, but it seems there's more of I watched a video recently on YouTube where someone tried to speak at Berkeley and she was basically shouted down. Now, what happened to free thought? What happened to freedom of expression? You may not agree. I may not agree with a lot of stuff I see, but I don't sit there and shout a person down. We've become so callous as a society that it's affected our relationships, the way that we deal with people. I remember when I was a young boy, if I heard a four-letter word when I was at the bus stop, everybody just went, oh, and just made this like, oh, you know. And now I drive by a bus stop near my house here, and I hear kids dropping F-bombs like they're saying them, there, and these. I mean, they're just like part of the vernacular. So I think this has affected a relationship because you've got a bigger schism between older workers or baby boomers like myself, who were raised one way. I was a latchkey kid. I never saw my parents when I came home. But now you got millennials who have daycare workers and aunts and uncles, and more people aren't moving out of the house. So, you know, here's my older brother and sister at the house. and you don't have latchkey kids anymore, or else they call social services on you.
Right.
So now I've been raised, and you've been raised a certain way where we were more independent, more, I'll just say it, more courteous in the way that we dealt. And you have more millennials coming up that are more microwave. I want an answer now. I want everything now. I want to Google it now. I want information now. I want to go down to the library and check it out. This has affected relationships between age gaps. When you deal with, when we have young, and I've experienced this in HR millions of times, where I've had younger workers who relate one way to training and older workers that relate to a training, and how they interrelate with how they communicate with each other, can't communicate. This is even more intense than racial communication. We have people who won't communicate based on prejudices or paradigms or whatnot because of race, creed, gender, whatnot. I'm seeing more of an issue in relationships with millennials and baby boomers trying to work in the workforce together, because one is slowly coming out of the workforce and one's coming in, and you don't have much coming in behind the millennials. So in terms of that relationship, that's going to be what's going to be hard. The company that learns to manage the expertise and the knowledge of the baby boomer with the technical knowledge of the millennial is going to be the successful company. And I don't think it's necessarily a Google or an Apple just because they're hip chic companies. I think it could be any company. It could be a company that digs wells. As long as they're able to communicate and work those relationships out between those two groups, because those two groups just don't communicate.
So what you're saying is, basically what you're saying then, Mel, is there are different levels of relationship building that we must go through.
Absolutely. Different levels between race, different levels between age, sex. There's so many levels of relationship, and then knowing where you are in that relationship, is very important.
Exactly. That is so important. I'm so surprised that we don't have a real certification in being a CRO. I'm calling it a Chief Relationship Officer, because I like what you said. There are different levels of relationship. And Mel, how do you believe, and Demetrios, anyone can chime in on this, the relationships, whether they're healthy or bad relationships, how are they affecting our bottom line profits and our performance and productivity in the workplace? Do you find that as a factor?
I found it. There's a meme that goes around where it says the CFO says to this CEO, "This is going to cost a lot of money to train these people." Mm-hmm. And the CEO is like, yeah, this is going to cost a lot. And then the CFO goes, and then they may go somewhere else. And the CEO is like, well, what is the cost of us losing or training them and losing them anyway? Because we don't train them. So yeah. So you on one side you've got people who are watching the bottom line saying, we hate to train people, and then they leave us and they go somewhere else. And then you have the other mindset, which is, well, if we don't train our people, then why did we hire them in the first place? Because they're not able to do the job. We'll just have to hire somebody else's trained people. So it's in terms of where you want the person to go in their evolution of their job. You're going to have to train people, and you're going to have to work those relationships out with those people of, you're here to do a job and we appreciate you. And that sounds very bottom line, but we're going to train you because we want you to stay here. We want you to be productive in this job. We don't want to not train you because we're afraid you're going to leave. And I'm afraid that's where some companies are losing a lot of people. And if you go on Monster Career Builder, you can see it's the same companies. And you're like, oh my gosh, this company has so much turnover. Well, they're only training to a point and they won't expand. And this is true in HR. I see more and more HR people just doing workers' comp, just doing benefits, just doing recruiting, and they're not being allowed to expand in other areas of HR. Why? Because they're afraid that if they have too many talents, they'll become an HR generalist and move on to another company. So I just talked to a person the other day that for 5 years, all she's done has been a workers' comp specialist, which is nothing wrong with that. But she has no other skills now because they wouldn't train her anywhere else, and that's why she left. She goes, I left because I'm not learning anything. She goes, I make good money. It's a great company, great benefits. We have picnics. We go bowling, the whole 9 yards. But I'm not learning anything, and I got to leave, or I'm going to be a workers' comp specialist when I'm 90 years old.
The relationship with the job, just one task, just one relationship. And I must say this, one of our Chinese doctor, I think Dr. Chu, on one of our previous shows, brought up the fact that the unrest that we see in our country against, with our nations around the world is not what we are told it is. It's a lack of healthy relationships. And it really concerns me when I look at individuals as human leaders of their own countries, of millions of folks, and for some reason we can't sit down and talk and develop a healthy relationship. So I think we have some work going forward as TTD and as business owners in the market making a difference to share our model, which is working. And we want to ensure that we have success in our relationships and communications going forward, especially for our next generation. Demetrios, would you like to have anything to add on this as we prepare for a short break?
Yeah, real quick. I know we're talking about relationship right now. A lot of people that come into these companies and there's training involved. If they don't trust you, they're going to take the training, and take it elsewhere because they just don't trust you. That's the biggest thing. They have to trust you, they have to like you, and they have to believe in what you're doing, because once you lose that trust in the relationship, they're going to be looking for another avenue, another way out, another whatever they're looking for. They're going to use you to get what they want to move forward elsewhere. So relationship is so vital.
Well, thank you, Demetrios. And I'm going to add this before we take our break and close on this. Relationships are the most valuable thing we have. We have good relationships and we have bad relationships. And the question becomes, how do we determine a good relationship from a bad relationship? And that's our homework assignment, is to journal and think about, how do we determine a good relationship from a bad relationship? Now, with that question in mind, we're going to take a quick break and come back and talk about communication and its importance as we move forward in the 21st century to build up our business entities and our workplace development.
Do you want to empower families and young people in your community? Then take the time to make a tax-deductible contribution to the Coach Tate Fund. The Coach Tate Foundation is dedicated to helping young people and their families in learning and passing on the kinds of life skills that we all need to succeed. All too often, we hear about kids and their families having encountered life's difficulties that could have been easily avoided by knowing better decision-making skills, from anger management to money management to something as simple as learning to manage how we spend our time or how we use our job skills. Make a donation to the Coach Tate Fund. It'll help kids who need help and their families too. Make your contribution to the Coach Tate Fund. Get details at www.coachtatefoundation.com. And oh, by the way, thank you. Empower your family with the dynamic new book by Host-Phantceena Halres, Our Sixth Sense and Purpose, The Power in Knowing Who You Are. It's the book that gives you insights into life's problems. Host-Phantceena Halres is an author, motivational speaker, and national broadcaster who believes the answers to your problems lies within the knowledge that was once traditionally passed down by families. But that knowledge has been short-circuited by today's faster pace. The book, Our Sixth Sense and Purpose, The Power in Knowing Who You Are, brings that accumulated wisdom to the problems that all families face. You'll find your copy of Our Sixth Sense and Purpose, The Power in Knowing Who You Are at Amazon and at better bookstores. Empower your life with the dynamic new book, Our Sixth Sense and Purpose, The Power in Knowing Who You Are by Host-Phantceena Halres.
Welcome back to Empowered Family Talk, our second session here with Mr. Mel Rappleyea, Mr. Demetrios Meimaridis, and Mr. Dimitri Petropoupos, if he can get connected back to us, as we continue to discuss 21st century success in our relationships and communication for our business owners and our workplace. And before we start this segment, guys, I have a submittal that I would like to take a couple of excerpts. It's by Journey Home out of San Jose, California. Wrote a piece on how the internet is changing the way humans communicate in the 21st century. And he starts the paper and quotes, "The methods of communication then and now." He said, "Our methods and modes of communication are changing. Our ancestors formed relationships much differently than we do today. Conversations were based solely on verbal cues and interaction, expressing vocalics, the tone of voice, proxemics, interpersonal distance, and kinesics, gestures. Verbal cues allow people to form impressions and develop relationships with their communicators as they spoke. Conversations were colloquial, and feedback was given instantly by the person to whom you were speaking. Essentially, before the 21st century, relationships were formed in the present tense as people socialized face to face. How people perceive, use, and respond to issues of time in their interaction with others helped anticipate future interactions, and the rate of information conversed was fluid and steady." And the question I have for Mel for the table here is, will online communication have an effect, adversely or positive, on our relationships being formed?
I think both. I think what you're going to find is, unfortunately, you see a lot more terse emails. You see a lot more. I'll give a quick story. I wrote about this on an article that I did recently. There's two individuals that work together on a project, and one individual walked up to the other individual in the hallway and said, "How's everything going with Project A?" He goes, "Oh, fine. We're a couple days behind, but we should make it up this week." The individual goes back into the office, sends a terse email. "How can you say that we're 3 days off? This is not acceptable. This is a horrible thing. And then just basically the email just went on to admonish the person who he had just talked to in the hallway. And he doesn't. So in one sense, it's bad because you have people that hide behind the monitor and the screen to become tough people to say, "Oh, this is not acceptable. This is unacceptable." So you have that individual that you have to work with to say, you need to communicate face to face and not, tell me in the hallway it's okay, and then tell me 3 minutes later in a nasty email that you've CC'd everybody and BCC'd the CEO. This is where trust arose, because the person's like, well, now I don't trust this person because they tell me everything's okay, and then they write an email to half the company's executives saying how unacceptable this is. And now the level, and I think Demetrios talked about this, now the trust level is gone. So that's one part that's bad. The good part is that with the internet, with social media, with email. I mean, I was explaining to my kids the other day. They saw this brown manila or manila envelope that we used to put interoffice memorandum in, and we used to write the name of where it was going. We put the little string around it, and we threw it in a box. And then the mail person came along and picked it up. And they're looking at me like, "You're kidding." And I go, "Yeah, when you had to say something to somebody, you put in an interoffice memo, you tied it up, you put it in there, and the mail got to them that day or the next day." And they go, that's totally inefficient. And I go, well, you learn to work around the communication devices that you have. And the great thing about throwing something in a bucket is if you did it and you were kind of upset at the time, you could go back into the bucket and pull your memo out. It's a little bit harder once an email goes. I always had a boss that said, before you hit that little switch to send that email telling everybody where they can go play, walk around the building a couple times before pushing the button. Maybe even take 24 hours before pushing the button. There's a lot of people that are very sensitive, myself included, that will send a terse email before thinking, oh, maybe I shouldn't have sent that. I was kind of upset at the time, but now I'm kind of chilled out, and you can't really pull it back. Well, you can in one sense, but you can't. So that's why the communication is so important, because you have people that are misusing these new devices that we have to communicate. And we have to get back to, this is just a tool. It doesn't replace the face-to-face. And we're going to talk a little bit more about, what our company does. But that's one of the things our company does. We like to, and I had this conversation with Francina the other day. I said, had this particular person called you back? No. We sent them an email. Yes. We made a call to their office. Yes. And Francina said the thing to me that struck home. These people only respond when you get up in their face. You got to get in their face and you got to talk to them. They're not going to respond to it. And that I think what you told me the other day answers everything. You still have to have the human connection.
Absolutely. And that's, Demetrios, did you have something you want to add here on the impact of social media on our communication going forward?
Well, a lot of people are on social media. They use it more than others. Social media is very powerful. There's a lot of people, for instance, that I didn't even know really where they were. And social media, you can find them, what they're doing. And it's interesting. You can find them, and all of a sudden you might be in the same type of business. I know Mel has a lot of contacts on his social media, but I have some which I'm trying to reach out. But it's better if you knew them a while back and you could reconnect than just trying to connect with somebody new, because you already knew them. You had a relationship before, now you're kind of rebuilding it again. But social media is very powerful, and if you use it the right way, you can really excel with it.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. I guess I'm very sensitive in listening to what our families are struggling with, and often our family head of households are CEOs and chairmen of boards of these major corporations that exist. One of the key things I believe is important here, from another excerpt from the report, was recently the rise of technology has developed a new form of communication, and they called this, it's really interesting, through computer-mediated communication. They call it CMC, Mel, computer-mediated communication, which I found quite interesting. And they said it began in the 1990s. It was shared by many people, and they called it computer-mediated communication, the CMC. It was a new form of communication which no longer allowed for or required the physical aspects of a conversation. Verbal cues are replaced by nonverbal cues, and the sensation of physical content, facial expressions, tone of voice, interpersonal distance, body position, appearance, gestures, touch, smell, all of it has become obsolete. And the question becomes this. As we look at Facebook, we saw the CEO of Facebook, I believe Mel, sit before a gruesome principal's office visit in Congress last week about his technology communication. I call it his CMC. And while Facebook is doing a great thing, it's just like anything else. There's always going to be some crooks that's going to figure out a way to take a good thing and make it bad.
Absolutely.
Even on the workplace and in the home, I think Facebook has done a wonderful thing to bring families back together. They can see grandma, their children that are everywhere. It's a wonderful thing. But going forward, we have to be a little bit more cognizant of the impact all of this technology is having on our economic productivity and profits, real productivity and profits in the 21st century. And we have to address that, Mel and Demetrius, as we move forward. Now, the second comment that I believe really makes one think. He says, the question is, how does technology and the internet distort relationships? And I want you to think about that, Mel and Demetrius. How does technology and the internet distort business relationships? His quote says, online communication brings forth a whole new meaning of give and take. And as time moves on, the CMC relationship, that's the computer-mediated communication relationship, quickly grows non-verbal bonds that a physical relationship could not achieve. Now, how relevant is that? He believes that a computer-mediated communication model grows quickly non-verbal bonds between two human beings that a physical relationship could not achieve. Quite interesting.
That's very, very different. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I want to think about that. Let that soak for a minute, because that's where we are in today's workplace and business.
And one class that I teach, that I've been teaching for a long time before it became popular, is body language. And over 80% of what we say is through the way we interact with our body, the way we breathe, the way we touch our nose, our hair, which is, I understand the technology that he's talking about. I just don't see that overtaking the fact that I can sit in a room with somebody and basically tell if they're lying. Just through classes I've taught on body language. It's very hard, and this is a problem too with any kind with texting, with emails. A lot of people have gotten into the sloppy habit of not using punctuation, and there's a big difference between let's go eat granddad and let's go eat granddad. So are we going to physically eat granddad like cannibals, or am I telling granddad I want to go and have dinner with granddad? And a simple comma makes the big difference between grandpa dying and grandpa getting a meal. And that's where I have problems with taking people out of it and just putting computers into it, because the art of punctuation and just email etiquette has gone out the window, and people say something that they don't mean, and they're like, oh, and then you read tone into the email or you read tone into the text, and a lot of people are like, what did he mean by that? Or some people just respond with this. I was guilty of this. I used to respond to my staff by just putting K. I didn't like to write long emails. And they would get nuts and they would say, all right, I just wrote you 3 paragraphs and you wrote back K. And I go, yeah, that's because it's okay. And they go, but you have no comment on it. And I'm like, no, it's okay. I go, if I have a comment on it, I'll write a comment on it. But then I started to realize from their point of view, because when I was doing my feedback on my review, they're like, the only thing that we don't like about you is when we send you an email out, all you write is K, or let's talk about it later. So let's talk about it later. We've programmed in our mind is you don't like what we're saying, and K means just go ahead and do it. But there's nothing else other than that. So I've had to work on that. But that's the problem that I have with machinery doing this and not people, because there's you can read tone and inflection into an email or text so easily that's not there just by missing punctuation.
Yes. And Demetrius, you found that as a key tenet in our success as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, in touching communicating 24 hours a day, 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Can you share with us how you see security profession especially in critical sensitive areas like oil and gas and nuclear power plants, being affected by the good of the communication for emergency response, and then its detriment behind the cyber threats. And what we created that hybrid where we sat down with folks. Can you just share a little bit about that?
Technology is great, especially with you got iPhones and Android phones and every kind of phone out there, T-Mobiles and all this stuff they're coming out with. And the thing,
guard tracking system, Demetrios, I had to add that in there. That guard tracking system, the software.
We'll get to that. But I was saying, texting. People are kind of addicted to texting now. It's a cheap way of not being in front of somebody. Sometimes people just text just to text. But on the good part of it, texting is it should be used for a good communication, not a cheap way to not communicate with somebody. Because you could just text somebody, just like Mel was talking about, the way you text and the way you say stuff. I mean, you can add pictures, all kinds of stuff. You might take it the wrong way. And but as far as security, a lot of stuff can be encrypted, and so you got to be very aware of what's being texted, what's being sent, because a lot of codes are being sent. One word might mean something totally different. So texting in the security business can be very good, but it also could be very dangerous, especially if that person doesn't know what you're texting about.
Exactly. So we're dealing with a double-edged sword here around our communication in the 21st century.
Yeah.
It's not what it was 25 years ago, Mel and Demetrios, when we were hiring into the workplace. You pretty much shook somebody's hand, you met them.
Yep.
You took them to lunch, you sat down in front of them, and you developed a relationship. And today we have a lot of EOC cases for sexual harassment and discrimination around something as clean as communication and relationships that are designed for us to be prosperous in life. It has also become our Achilles heel.
Yeah.
That it also takes us to court if we are perceived at developing a relationship the wrong way in the workplace. Mel, and I'm sure you and Demetrios both have seen that, where a good relationship goes bad.
Yep.
And affects productivity and a work product.
Absolutely.
I want to ask something about talking about technology. And Demetrios, I don't know if he's back, but he developed a software we're using with our company, Delta Online Guards. It's a tracking system. I wish he was back on, but I think he's a little bit busy. It's going to be such a powerful tool because sometimes with people signing in and scheduling conflicts, everything is so user-friendly. Timekeeping, shift planning, security department, HR is going to help with our HR department, client records, 24/7, 365. This is a phenomenal piece of software. And if anybody wanted to get some information, please reach back and we'll have Dmitry, that actually the software developer that created it, to reach out to you and kind of give you all the information you need for your company.
Well, that's important in the, and I know, Mel, you have the ends on the applicant tracking system as we are recruiting through communication channels on the ground and online candidates for particular positions, particularly minority and women candidates to fill certain positions within our corporate ranks. We have to use both sides. We have to use online and offline communications in order to produce a good product. Would you not agree, Mel?
Absolutely.
We have to use both, but I tell you what, just my little bit there is I find no better way to close a deal on business or a job than sitting across from that man or that woman that I'm going to be responsible for producing a product for, providing a service for, and shaking that person's hand and looking that person in the face with commitment. There's just so, like you said, Mel, there's so much that you get in body language that you just don't get on a resume anymore.
That's one of the The good and the bad thing about applicant tracking systems known as ATS systems is a big frustration for people because it doesn't really, the way that you write a resume anymore isn't so much what you've done, it's more about keywords. It's more like you're writing a website where it's a Boolean search, because what Taleo and Brass Ring and Connexa and all these different companies do that sell applicant tracking systems is you write a resume and they look for the word, say, architect, architect, architect. The more times you have the word architect in there, it brings you to the top of the search. And I've noticed that recruiters, and this is the big difference between our company and other companies, is, I got brought up picking up the phone and calling people and saying, who do you know? Who do you know that's a good, security chief for a nuclear facility? Who do you know is a good architect for this? Who do you know, would be a good CFO? Not taking them, throwing them into a system, letting the computer pick the top 10% based on who put the word architect in there more than the other guy put the word architect in there. So it's a tool. It's just that, but I think what's happening, the difference between our company and other companies are some people are using that tool as 98% of their search. They're letting the computer pick it, and they're missing all these people. You got to remember, engineers, architects, accounting people, I'm sorry if I offend you, write horrible resumes. It's not their thing. They either put too much in or they don't put enough in, and they write bad ones. Or if you have somebody that's been in the same job for 10 years, he or she doesn't know how to write a resume. So they read a couple of, blogs, or they go on YouTube and they write something up, and it's not exactly the best introduction of what they do. You have to talk to the person. You have to reach out to them. But unfortunately, what's happened is, and the difference between our company and other companies are, you have companies now where you have people that are completely relying on the applicant tracking system to pick the candidate, to pick the talent. Imagine if you were in the NFL for just 1 second. Let me just make this point. You're in the NFL and you hear about this great quarterback, this high school quarterback that's in Poughkeepsie, New Jersey, and you send a drone to go watch him. And you tell them to, fill out a Myers-Briggs online, and you tell them to do all this, and no one actually goes out and talks to the kid, and no one speaks to him, and no one finds out about his parents and about his family life, and is his head on straight and whatnot. No one would ever recruit anybody for football not having actually sat there, watched the person, and talked to the person. So why would you use a system to recruit talent the same way, where you've never spoke to the person? You're letting the computer pick talent for you. That would be like I said, that would be like the NFL or a college recruiter saying, I'll just let the computer pick it. He's a 4-star. It makes no sense. That's the big difference between what we do and what our competitors do. What we do is we actually have skin in the game. We put feet on the floor. We actually go out and we talk to people. We don't sit there, throw all these, here's 300 people, let's throw them in the computer and let's see what it spits out as who our number one candidate is. Do you know they recently did, I just want to make this point too, they recently took Steve Jobs and they put him in an applicant tracking system with a bunch of other people, and this was to run a company. And they put all these other CEOs in. He didn't even come up in the top 25% on the search. And it said in the applicant tracking system, because he had been fired by Apple, the company that he created, that he was a bad candidate because he'd already been fired by his company. He was a bad candidate. Here's a man that revolutionized the world as we know it, and he doesn't even come up in the top 25% of candidates for the job.
That was a rigged system. The system didn't open up. You're saying it missed out on a good candidate. You can't solely rely on that.
No, you have to have people that know what they look for when they look at a resume and know how to read a bad resume.
Exactly.
You can't have a computer do that for you.
Well, and that brings me to my point on this, has been an employer over so many years, written communication and verbal communication. And particularly, we're teaching that in the Coach Tate Foundation, the charity that I work for, in ensuring that we build that pipeline of workers for the 21st century in our young folks, and teaching them soft skills. What I've heard from a lot of my clients over the years and today, we have a 24/7 business service model in HR. And communication. Soft skills are so important today than they ever have been in our history. Can you write a letter? Can you communicate with me on the telephone, on the microphone? Can you speak good English? Like you said, do you know how to put a comma where a period is not supposed to go? And I think these are some of the basic tenets of success in the 21st century, whether we're a business owner or an executive in the corporate workplace or just a regular worker. We've got to learn how to communicate, and we've got to learn how to build good, healthy relationships with our environment, with our bosses, our coworkers. And I believe we have done that. We continue to do that successfully. And of course, we're growing now. We've got the cyber threats with security. And I like what you guys are doing at TTD. It gives me a chance to work more in the charity with the children. So I build that pipeline and send them over to you to hire. Demetrios, can you share with us the importance of communication, especially in Europe, where folks really rely on body language, include a different set of principles when they're communicating to get business going or to get a job?
Is this the Dimitri in Greece?
Either one. I don't know who's on. If Dimitri is back, I don't know.
I think we might have lost him.
Okay, you're from Greece, so you can go ahead and take the question.
I'm a good background, but the relation, it doesn't like all this technology we're talking about. If you don't trust the person that's giving you the technology, they're not even really going to look at it. You have to trust the person. Trust is something that you build and you earn, right? And with the technology that people are coming out there with all these social medias, a lot of people, they want to connect you on some of these social medias. You don't even want to know where they actually came from. So that's very vital to how you use the technology as well. Go ahead. Oh, I thought you were going to say something. But
no, I was just having you to, share your story.
As far as over there in Europe is a different culture. I wish Dimitri was on it because he actually lives there. I'm Greek, but grew up in America, but he's actually Greek that lives in Greece. Yeah. He could probably give you a better scenario on it, but my family's going back and forth to Europe all these years. The whole culture is so different over there that for me to give a good scenario, I'd have to actually live there. So I think Dimitri would be a better one to actually give on that.
Yes, and we'll get Demetrios back on with us on another show. This subject is so huge. Relationships and communication is a core tenet for our success moving forward as business owners and those who are staffing positions in our corporate America roles. And I must answer the question before we wrap this session up. The question we started with on the second half was communication in the 21st century, and will online communication have an adverse or positive effect on relationships being formed? And the answer he provides was the adverse. He said people need to communicate face-to-face in order to form a strong relationship, period. People need to communicate face-to-face in order to form a strong relationship, period. And the positive point he made was people are learning more about each other in a comfortable environment. And I'm going to say that again. People are learning more about each other in a comfortable environment. And I believe going forward in the 21st century, it behooves our employers, and I'm sure you would agree, Mel and Demetrios, our employers to take a look at that paradigm and that bottom line in turnover cost and lawsuits because of bad communication and bad relationships festering and growing within the workplace and within their supply chain and within our Congress You see it all day long. You turn on the TV any day, you can see bad communication and bad relationship with our nation, our Congress, and our world leaders. And what we're doing is making a difference. We have a hybrid model that works, that serves as a bridge over this troubled waters as we move forward in the 21st century to build good business, good profits, healthy relationships while we do it. Mel, can you share with us your closing, and Demetrios, your closing as we wrap this up, and share with our listeners how to reach you guys directly for consulting and the services and products you provide. And we'll start with Dimitri.
I think he's back. Dimitri?
I'm back. Hi.
Hi, Dimitri. You're back. Welcome back.
If you want to...
Sorry for that. Hi. Yes.
If you want to give a little explanation on that software, if you want to wrap it up or you want to, whatever you think.
Yes, Dimitri, we're in our last session here and we've been talking about the internet and how the internet is changing the way humans communicate in the 21st century. And and we were just wrapping up, and we wanted to get more information on the software, the communication software you created, the guard tracking system, and what value add that's going to bring to our relationships as we communicate our services and products out to the market.
A guard tracking system can add some.
Hello? I think we might have lost him.
Let me go on it. Okay.
Maybe the technology, speaking about technology.
Yeah. Let me just wrap this up real quick, Demetrios.
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to have you and Mel give close. Mel went away. So I'm going to have you and Mel do a close. And then if Demetrios call in, don't interrupt. We want to close this. I want to read the poem and close it out. We can edit him in later.
Okay.
Okay, tell me when I can start.
Go ahead. Mel, I think, is waving. Go ahead.
Okay, Mel, could you share with us as we close our last session, our second segment here, could you share with our listeners your direct contact information for our customers and for those who are aspiring to go to work or to participate in some of our business contracts, and whatever close you have for our listeners to begin to embrace soft skills and work on those for the 21st century success.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. My contact information, you can reach me at, my phone number is 302-298-6489, 302-298-6489. And you can reach me at my email, hrzar, that's HR, C as in cat, Z as in zebra, A as in apple, R as in Robert, hrzar@ymail. And just in closing, what we do as a staffing company and as a security company is a little bit different. Our people are checked out, and probably the best standard, which is using the courthouse system and not using a database to do background checks. Database background checks are not, working. That's one of many positives that we have that our competitors don't have. So I would say if you're interested in staffing, we can staff across the world. Like I said, we've got Dimitri in Greece, we've got contacts in Europe, we've got contacts in Asia, South America. We can do any number of things across the globe. But the one thing that we can do that's different is we make sure that we get to the best talent. I mean, that's what it's all about. Not what a computer told us. This is the best person that fits what you told us that you need. And the fact that we have so much experience in our group lends this to the fact that, we just didn't start doing this. I've been doing this, since 1983. And others that I won't mention now because I don't want to give away their age, have been doing it for a long time too. But we've been doing it for a really long time, and we've been doing it in the old format and the new technology both. So that's the difference that we bring. We bring people that have actually walked the walk. Francina's been, in Europe. She's been, you can find her on YouTube. She's been in Asia. I've been in the Middle East. I've been in South America. Demetrios and Dimitri both have extensive backgrounds in travel and work in the security industry and software development. So, you have real experts, people that have actually done the work that are helping you make your organization better. And I'll end it there.
And yeah, I heard you guys have some exciting new contracts coming up that we won't talk about today. We'll save that for later, but I wish you well, and I'm supporting and saying all those, wishing you all the best for that big announcement coming. Demetrios, thank you, Mel.
Yes, in closing, I like to say that where we're headed is such a phenomenal place with this new technology, and we have the software that we're going to be using that's going to eliminate a lot of issues. Francina and Mel have known each other, I think, 25 years or something. That long-time relationship, you just can't earn that. That's something that's built through the years. I've been with Francina, worked with her for, 14 years in the security business. So not all the time is going to be good and bad. You just have to go and adjust. And we're so excited with the new stuff that we have going on. We have a new contact in Europe with our relationship building, with the new software. My number is 919-255-8054. 919-255-8054. My email is Demetrios, Demetrios, at Coach Tate, Tate, Foundation.com. Demetrios at Coach Tate Foundation.com. That's our nonprofit that we actually work as well. And thanks a lot.
Thank you, Demetrios and Mel. We thank you so much. And Dimitri in Athens, Greece. We thank you so much for sharing your wise counsel with our listeners today on focusing on building those good soft skills to have strong, healthy relationships and strong, healthy communications in the 21st century so we all succeed. And we must say people do business with people they trust and people they like. And so I'm going to close. I have a couple short poems that was submitted by our colleagues. One is a poem about our relationships in the 21st century. And the second one is referencing our communication in the 21st century. So we'll close out with the poem. And the first one reads, "Me without you is like a plane that doesn't fly. A year without July. A stream which became dry. A match without a fire. A circuit without the wire. A car without a tire. Shoes with no laces. A sentence without spaces. A nerd without his braces. A phone without a dial. A face without a smile. A clock without a wow. A sock without a feet. And a heart without its beat." And the second poem reads from our Family and Friends poem, "Communication" by Amy. And she writes, "Communication takes practice. It's never perfect. Sometimes not patient. Sometimes not kind. But you have to say what's on your mind. Lend an ear. Listen, not just hear, to the ones you love so dear. Communication is not a one-way street. It takes two to conquer this feat. Communication is hard, you see, but in the end, it is the key to that great relationship we all want and need. Open your heart. say what's on your mind. When you are partners for life, there's nothing to hide. Until next week, same time, same station. I am Francina Tate Halres, your hostess.